Hey everybody, it's me, Machine Vegan again. We're doing another video because I have time. This one's going to be on Breakout. So this is part 3 of 1001 video games you should play before you die. And I've got my handy dandy book right here. So Breakout, which a lot of people are familiar with Breakout because they played a lot of different clones of it. But Breakout, the original release date, 1976, platform various, developer Atari, and genre action. Nearly 4 decades on, and video games still regularly draw inspiration from Atari's formative, blockbusting arcade game. In a very real way, Breakout defined the proto-vocabulary of its medium, taking the paddle and ball of Pong's redacted approximation of table tennis and repurposing it into something unique, novel, and only possible in a video game. Conceptualized by Atari founder Nolan Bushnell and one of the company's most influential engineers, Steve Bristow, the top third of Breakout's screen is lined with bricks. You bounce a ball off these bricks to make them disappear, one by one, catching the ball on its rebound with a sliding paddle to prevent it from disappearing off the bottom of the screen. The skill comes in directing your shots in a way as to hit the remaining bricks at the top of the screen, scaling up from Pong's need to simply hit the ball to take into greater account the angle at which you strike it. Walls 2 must be used to bounce the ball around the play area, introducing yet more scope for strategy and showboating. Originally played on a black and white monitor in arcades, cabinet screens had strips of tinted acetate applied to give the impression of color. Increased difficulty was introduced to the game by having the paddle shrink to half of its size once the ball is broken through the top row of bricks and hit the top of the play area. The understand elegance of both the core idea and execution ensures that Breakout remains a playable classic to this day. One of the cornerstones of the medium of sports games, its influence can be felt in countless contemporary titles from PopCap's Pachinko Hybrid Peggle to Q Games' Reflect Missile. And so we are on, let me remember the website we're on right now, F11. We are on Breakout Retro Games CZ. And so at retrogames.cz, that will, sorry. What did I do? There we go. And let's start this one over again. Oh, it wasn't even recording. Retrogames.cz. Perfect. That worked out for me. Hey everyone, it's me, Machine Vegan here. I'm happy to present another episode of the 1001 video games you should play before you die. And so I've got my handy dandy tome here that has everything in here. And we're gonna start with Breakout. It's already on the screen. Breakout, original release date 1976. Platform various, developer Atari, genre action. Nearly 4 decades on, and video games still regularly draw inspiration from Atari's formative, blockbusting arcade game. In a very real way, Breakout defined the proto-vocabulary of its medium, taking the paddle and ball of Pong's redacted approximation of table tennis and repurposing it into something unique, novel, and only possible in a video game. Conceptualized by Atari founder Nolan Bushnell and one of the company's most influential engineers, Steve Bristow, the top third of Breakout's screen is lined with bricks. You bounce a ball off these bricks to make them disappear one by one, catching the ball on its rebound with a sliding paddle to prevent it from disappearing off the bottom of the screen. The skill comes in directing your shots in such a way as to hit the remaining bricks at the top of the screen, scaling up from Pong's need to simply hit the ball to take into greater account the angle at which you strike it. Walls 2 must be used to bounce the ball around the play area, introducing yet more scope for strategy and showboating. Originally played on a black and white monitor in arcades, cabinet screens had strips of tinted acetate applied to give the impression of color. Increased difficulty was introduced by the game by having the paddle shrink to half its size once the ball has broken through the top row of bricks and at the top of the play area. It's written poorly. The understand elegance of both the core idea and its execution ensures that Breakout remains a playable classic to this day. One of the cornerstones of the medium of sports games, its influence can be felt in countless contemporary titles, from PopCap's Pachinko Hybrid Peggle to Q Games' Reflect Missile. And so this is this was This is the emulator website we're going to be using. It's right here, retrogames.cz. Czech Republic, and I assume it's to go ahead and avoid the the copyright hounds. And so it's actually pretty cool. We have we're emulating an Atari 2600 joystick, which has a button and it has a joystick. You've got the joystick controls. In this case, we're going to be using the controls for player 1, which are up, down, left, right, spacebar, F12, F11, Alt P, save, F8, black and white color mode, F2, and paddle. And down here, actually, they have the options for me to touch these different things. So right now I'm on novice. So right now it's just one player. Power on and off, color between black and white or color, game selection, best restarting it, and this game reset. So game select, there's apparently 4 different modes. Don't really understand what that means. And right there, so we go left and right, and then we also can up the paddle speed by using the arrows that go up and down. So same thing here. You press the space bar and it shoots the ball out to you and you start hitting the paddle. And I'm sure many people have played this game. They may not have played Breakout. They may not have played Breakout in this exact iteration, but they have played this game. If you were on Newgrounds, if you were on coolmathgames.com, if you were on any site that really wasn't blocked by the censors, if you went to a public school with computers, then you played some iteration of Breakout. Breakout is often cloned and emulated and reskinned and added in other features here and there, and I can see, really, you can tell why. I mean, it's an incredibly simple and fun game. You see, what you do is you hit it with the paddle. That's it. And so this game, I can also understand. In my last video, we talked about Pong. We talked about how kind of simple and easy of a game it is, and how influential and how much fun and popular it was, and for good reason, because we, as a society, understand that sometimes you don't want to talk to your friends. Sometimes when you're out of the bar, you're out of the club, you're having a good time, sometimes you just kind of hang out. If you don't have a video game system at home, or maybe you don't have a home that you want to bring people home to, you can go ahead and hop over to the local bar, pop in some quarters, play a quick game of Breakout. Maybe if you have 2 players, you can play with some of your, another one of your friends, and get it going. Really simple game, and actually incredibly difficult. And I think that's something a lot of people maybe don't know. If you haven't really played a lot of retro games are really hard. You have to remember that memory was so expensive, and it's really hard and really expensive to buy any of these things. Pong, adjusted for inflation, apparently, according to my Google search, was $1,400. So if you happen to just have $1,400, which let's be honest, guys, poverty's been a thing forever. So not everybody could afford to buy a home version of this console. But if you could play this somewhere that had a version of it for $1 or $2, then you could go ahead and eat up some time and have a really good time. So something like this, you have to remember, was groundbreaking. We were 1976. What are we? Maybe a decade or two, a couple decades after the fact, after the people started to see color on their televisions. People still owned black and white televisions because televisions were so expensive. You couldn't just go out and buy another one. Today, Amazon Day and Black Friday deals, open box deals, you could get yourself, even the cheapest 4K TV is going to run you, I think on Amazon Prime Day they had a 40-inch TV for $200. It was whatever throwaway brand that they had, but it was still $200 for a 4K TV. At this time, you had real people who owned televisions who would fix them. I remember there's an episode of Malcolm in the Middle where Hal is, it's the opening scene, so they set it up. It's like the couch gag from The Simpsons, right? Where they set it up, and the boys are on the couch, and they are just, whoa, they're really excited. They're really set up to watch whatever it is that they're watching. You can't see what they're watching, and Lois comes in, and she's like, boys, what are you doing? And then you see, Hal, just call a repairman. And Hal's, no, they're going to charge me an arm and a leg or whatever it is. You know, I got to learn to do it. And he is inside this cathode ray tube television. I assume trying to replace the transistors or trying to replace the tube or trying to do anything, which, by the way, is really dangerous. Don't play with cathode ray tubes. They have a huge amount of power in them that is really, really easy to stop your heart. But this scene ends with them all giggling as Hal is kind of screaming because the television is sparking. And that's kind of the ideal is that you're fixing the what you have. And so if you were lucky enough to actually be able to get Breakout or an Atari 2600 in the 1970s, 1980s, you were set. And these games were hard. If you knew somebody who could go ahead and just slap it out and was at the arcade and they held the high score, it was a big deal, because you had to play this game for hours and hours and hours in order to go ahead and get the high score. Because look, as I am playing on a modern computer with my keyboard, I'm not having to worry about potentiometers. I'm not worried about damaged physical switches. I'm also not worried about having to pay money, to keep playing this. But here I am doing my best to try to go ahead and play Breakout. And I have not, when you see that ball go whoosh, that is pretty difficult to kind of capture or whatever, dude. So I can definitely see somebody sitting down, trying to get the high score, and then maybe they eliminate the entire blue line and they go to school or they go to work the next day and they're like, yeah, I got all the way to the red line. Oh yeah, I already got all the way past level 1. I have absolutely no idea if there's a level 2. I have never played the original version of Breakout. I have always played clones of Breakout or very similar copies of Breakout. And Breakout is such a simple game that, up into the 2000s and 2010, I should say 2000s because I remember it specifically, you could get little rinky-dink copies of these at swap meets, and you could get copies of these at grocery stores and the checkout line. They had these kind of Game Boy clones, which they weren't really clones, right? They were just kind of cheap versions of a handheld device where you could get them. You'd beg your mom and you'd beg your dad and hey, can you go, I want this, come on, don't be like that. And then you'd be sitting in the back seat of your car, and they were almost never illuminated. So you had to have the light turned on, and then your parents yelled at you because they said it was illegal to have the light inside the car, which, fun fact, it's not. But it does turn your windshield into a mirror. So, and by that it means it makes it really reflective, so you can't see out at night. And so that's usually the reason. I have no idea why parents thought the need to tell everybody that it was illegal to turn the light on, which maybe my parents are in their 60s, so maybe it was a thing somebody somewhere told them once, or maybe it was a thing that nobody wrote down, but it was in one of those unspoken rules that people did. So you'd be in the back, you'd try to be playing this game, and it would entertain you for hours as long as you put the devotion and the dedication in. You were there just slapping this little paddle around, trying to go ahead and get the high score and placing reset after reset after reset. And going back to what I was saying, classic video games are hard. You only had so much memory. Today you can get a terabyte of data in storage, HDD for $150. It's not too expensive. An SSD, I will admit, is expensive. For a terabyte, it's probably $200, for maybe even $300, depending on the reputable brand that you get. We usually go with Seagate. I've also gone Western Digital in the past. I've got 100 terabytes of Western Digital purple drives in my security system at work. And here at home, I've got 2 Western Digital blacks, one for my PS5 and one for my Xbox, whatever the latest one is. So those were expensive. I think those were $250, maybe $300. So those were more expensive than I anticipated them being. But in 1976, I don't know if anybody had a terabyte of data, hardware that could hold a terabyte of data. So you were dealing with kilobytes, which I've also apparently learned are kibibytes. That's a whole other thing. I mean, I'm sure there's a video that is better at explaining kibibytes versus kilobytes and terabytes versus tibibytes. But for the sake of simplicity here, I'm sure you're dealing with kilobytes of data, if that. You're dealing with just bytes and bytes and bytes. So you're dealing with whatever you have available to you. And so you've got to make this last. Your parents aren't going to turn around and dump another, every time you beat a game every week. Today, it's a thing, speed runs. I remember being in middle school and Destroy All Humans 2 had just come out. And I had a friend over the weekend. Like, I'd always was so jealous because he'd always be like, oh yeah, I beat that game, in 2 days. And he'd be like, how did you beat any game in 2 days? Is it that short? Is it that, and it really was just because he didn't do anything for the entire weekend. And I always, I had to, go to extracurricular activities, or I had to go outside, or I played other games. I do get bored of games. So, when he would say things like that, I'd be like, yo, how do you do that? And the thing is, even then, Destroy All Humans 2, it's, maybe 2000. Oh, what is that, 2008? 2007? Destroy All Humans 2 had come out, and it's $60. It's $60. It is not cheap. So I'm just kind of like, yo, dog, do you just have a bunch of money to keep, buying games? Because you beat them in a week, enjoy the game, dude. Just rush through it or whatever, right? And that's the same kind of way I assume people talked about Breakout and Pong and all these things. You bought your first Atari 2600 home, or you bought your various game consoles that were available at the time home, and you played them, and they were hard. They were hard. Right now, it is like super. Like, you can see me changing the paddle speed. This is actually pretty difficult to play, and I'm kind of glad that it is this hard, because this will set you up for hours and hours and hours of fun. Like, this is like, you're the ultimate parent, I assume, at Christmas. You got your hands on an Atari 2600 and you gave them to your kids or whatever for Christmas, and they're freaking out and whatever, because they are going to be entertained for hours playing this. And this is just one of the games that was available during the time, right? You remember, we still have Pong, and you could play Pong against your brothers or sisters. You could play Pongs against your parents, or you could do it in the backyard or whatever. And you've got the cartridges lined up on the back. I've actually, by the way, never owned an Atari 2600. I've never owned an Atari. I am not that old again. I was born in the 90s, mid-90s. So my parents never played video games either. They may have played some video games. They honestly don't really talk about it. But they don't find any pleasure or enjoyment in them. They don't play it. It doesn't scratch their lizard brain. They don't gamble. They don't do certain. My mom gardens and my dad builds. So those are the things that they like to do. My siblings also, don't really talk about it as much as well. They're not really big video game fans. I think we had a couple of different video game consoles, honestly, but it didn't really stick with them in the same manner. So this is kind of the closest that I've gotten to actually playing an Atari 2600. And as someone who has only seen photos, this is pretty spot on. I would assume this is pretty spot on. You stick the cartridge in, you go ahead and start pressing the switches and everything, and you move around this little board, and it is frustrating because I can't get past the first one. You apparently only have 4 lives. I could be wrong. I could be resetting this for no reason, and I could be being able to continue to go. No. Yeah, see, I have 5 balls available that I can keep going to. Okay, that makes sense then. So I have 4 balls now. Okay, all right. And I wholeheartedly respect this game. Oh, Robert, oh wow, what a great opinion. It's my name, by the way. You respect the game. Oh, that's so cool. Machine Vegan, you respect Atari? Wow, now they're going to really make it or whatever. By that I mean, like, I do think that it's something that a lot of people don't take into consideration when they do talk about old games. There's the joke in Death Clock, where I don't remember if they lose power. I actually I don't remember it, but I remember Swiss Guards. They asked them, I think, to play acoustic, and he's like, acoustic? Because they're metalhead, cartoon. And he's like, oh, grandpa's guitar. And the joke being, acoustic guitars for old people, we're all heavy and electric guitar or whatever, right? And so I think a lot of people look at Ataris and these classic games, especially because I think that the mass cloning and mass emulation and mass just copy and deep frying it again over and over and over again has really led to the cheapening of what is, you know, a really impressive piece of technology. Not only for the context of the time, but even today, where this is still something that is difficult to play. This is not, you know, this is very, very simple and very, very difficult. And I think a lot of people don't take that into consideration when they do talk about classic video games, Atari, Commodores, and stuff like that. I really enjoy the 8-Bit Geek on YouTube, because he does a really good job of kind of just being a collector, and a really good collector, and a person who's really interested in preserving the historical items of our historical past, because there's like a ridiculous amount of products, of content, of things that were produced that we lost, you know. There's a dude on TikTok who does the commercials for old electronics devices, and I love those commercials, dudes. Those are my favorite, seeing them. Oh yeah, you know, my modem goes ahead and retries, and it's actually got 7,000 baud, and I don't know what that means, man. And it's extra funny to me because I'll be watching these commercials, and I'll look up these devices, and there's nothing online about them. There's nothing online about them anymore. No, I can't find these modems and a real explanation of kind of what they do. And we know what, you know, modems are, obviously. You know, they allow us to connect the network to the internet, and the rudimentary internet that was available at the time in the 90s and I think late 80s. You know, you had to have these things that connected to your cell phone line, or to your phone lines and everything. And one of the more things that I do think is super interesting is like actually putting the phone on the on the thing, man, and people with the rotary phones, and it's like, this was specifically designed so you could put your rotary phone right on top of it or whatever. I'm just, what are you talking about, man? And so I think those are super important. And so pieces of technology like the Atari 2600 obviously will continue to live on, but I do really kind of want to see all of the failures also live on. I want to see all the weird pieces that get, you know, archived away and collected by people and put away and shown. And there's a museum that I wanted to go to. And I think it's in Mountain View, over, you know, the Apple headquarters, where, you know, every nerd lives. That I did want to go to, but it was just out of our way. But there was 2 or 3 other really cool museums, and I do really recommend you, if you are in the Bay Area and you're in Berkeley, so they were in Berkeley, there's a number of museums that they look more like passion projects, which to me is exactly the thing that I'm super interested in. I want to open a tangible, tactile museum where people are coming in, and they're not just, oh, well, that's kind of cool, and oh, that's kind of nice, and no, come on, try it out. Use it. I want you to know that what it was like to play video games in 1976. I want you to know what it was like to play video games in 1980. You have the arcade 1-ups, and those are super cool, and they introduce people into arcade games. But no, man, come on. I want you to see what it's like on an arcade cabinet made of MDF. You know, and with the lines in the CRT, because nobody has degaussed it. You know, I want you to see kind of, you know, it's the same way that I assume people get about like those live reenactments that they do for colonial times. They do the live reenactments for colonial times. You go and you're like, oh, well, you know, they're actors, so they're like, oh, I lived here in 1902 and we had to make our own bread. And I'm like, yeah, life sucked. Life was awful. Like, oh, people were like, oh, simpler times. Like, no. Like, I could just die at any point from just like diarrhea. That's a really, really funny David Cross joke. It's just like, oh yeah, being alive in the old days, like, if you got diarrhea, you died. Which was like, yeah, you know what? You know, obviously you don't die from the diarrhea. You die from whatever illness is killing you. You die from the dehydration or the fact that you're drinking stream water with no concept of germ theory and anything like that, and life sucked. So when people go, oh, back in the days, that was... No, it wasn't. It was not pleasant. There's the stresses of life are different at every point in history. I want people to show their kids, to show and to keep that history and be like, look at these different iterations. One of my favorite things is the fact that magazines, oh man, it upsets me so much that I don't have the space or the money or the time or the expertise to have a collection of the magazines. If you're under 30, then Game Informer. And if you play video games, I should say, Game Informer, the cheat codes books, going to the school fairs and getting the 1001 cheats, and because you couldn't look them up online because not everybody had internet access, or you had dial-up, or it was expensive, or whatever it was. And so you had to get the actual books, or you got magazines. But going further back than that, you could get the magazines, and this was something I learned from the 8-Bit Geek on YouTube, was you could get magazines that had the code. You typed out the code line by line, and you pressed enter. And if it worked, you were playing a game. And if it didn't, you were not playing a game. I don't know what it would say, but it would be like, what, syntax error? If you're getting to computer coding, then you've done the hello world command prompt, and you've done all those things. But you used to be able to get those. I love when they include promotional junk in those things. Whether it's junk or whether it's actually a usable thing, I don't care. In Mexico, they have feminine products with hair curlers and thermoses. I'm here in Los Angeles, so we have like every foreign type of grocery store. We have Japanese grocery stores, we have Chinese grocery stores, we have Spanish grocery stores, we have Salvadorian grocery stores, we have Mexican grocery stores, we have Hawaiian grocery stores. We have all of these little markets and stores that have these specific products from these specific countries, areas. Hawaii is for all intents and purposes its own nation. I hope they get their things settled soon, hopefully soon enough. But you get all of these really, really amazing things. And in 1976 and 1980s, there were magazines. And they had tapes. And those tapes had data. And if you put a magnetic tape, there's also another guy on TikTok who does these really cool designs, these really cool, not designs, I'm sorry. He has it's a magnetic strip music player. And so you get these cards, and they are encoded like your credit cards. Your credit card has data on it encoded in a magnetic strip, and it makes noise. And you can modulate it however you like, using magnetism. And so when you had tapes from these magazines, you could connect them to your computer, and you could tell your computer, like, hey, pay attention real quick. I don't know what the actual command was, but it would go all into the computer, and then that would translate to data, because magnetic tape is data. It's just not interpreted the same way. When I first heard how what are they called? Square started with their device, right? So you could go ahead and take credit card information with your cell phone. You could type it into your cell phone, but no credit card processor was going to be like, credit card processing company that just types in credit card numbers, totally safe. We were at a time when you would still get the messages on credit card machines that said, destroy card, which has always been something I've always wanted to see. But alas, they just cancel your card. But we still live in a time when they would emboss your credit card, which I've only seen once or twice in my life, because actually I've seen it a couple times, but as of recent I've seen it once or twice. When things go down, they bring out the old reliable and they emboss your card onto carbon paper. And so these tapes, when Square's starting, they're like, well, we'll just use the audio jack. Credit cards are just sound. That's it. That's nuts to me. that up until that point, and there's a couple also, they need to be a perfect kind of storm. You need internet service, you need access to a cell phone, not everybody had cell phones and da-da-da-da. But nonetheless, that has a really simple little design. That's it. It made noise into your phone, and your phone interpreted it as credit card data, and it would encrypt it. In some cases, you could block the numbers from being seen, and it would just show the last 4 for security. And that's the same thing that I wish that I have collected. And likely, I hope to, have the money and the time and the ability to open what is a tangible touch museum, like when the aquariums come to your school, or when you go to the touch pool, at the aquarium, and they let you touch the sea urchins and everything, right? I want people to come in and go, yeah, here, set it up like you would, what's his name? There's that meme, that kid. I want people to cosplay, like, hey, we've got the polo, we've got the wig. Here, you want to take a picture from the computer, man, and do it. So that people go ahead and think you're, you're that kid. You want to try that? That would be super, super cool. And then I'm showing you how the computer has evolved from. I would love to have a teletype machine there. I would love to have the mainframes there. I would love for it to be both, and maybe you could have like a walking kind of thing where you walk through the time periods and through the data and through the equipment, and then you could have a portion of it where you actually then come into an open room, and you can kind of try the different things here and there, and you put the tape in, and you load it, and you then can play the game, and then realize you can't save. There's no saving. You don't save the game because there's no ability for you to save, because that is not how computers were designed at the time. You might be able to save some games as you go later in time, as we get floppies and discs eventually and all these things. But for the most part, you just didn't save. When you played the game, you played the game. If you wanted to start off where you left off, you just left your computer on. Anybody who had a cartridge-based game console that didn't have memory knows that you just left the Nintendo 64 on. The Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, the first one, and the Super NES, you just left them on. I actually think the NES did have a save capability. Yeah, it did. But if you were in the middle of a level and your mom was like, hey, you gotta go to sleep, or hey, let's go to the store, then you're just gonna and you just leave it on, and then you come home, it's nice and roasty toasty. That's what I want people to, I want to share without it being like, oh, kids these days, like Ellen, kids these days can't use a rotary phone. Like, why would I need to? I also don't know how to, Robert, do not know, I'm a machine vegan, do not know how to use a plow. It seems very easy. It seems very simple. Do not have an ox to pull my plow. I have no need to pull a plow. So kids these days don't need to use a rotary phone. I don't need to use a rotary phone. I think they're cool, but I don't need to use a rotary phone. So I don't train on those things. I don't have those things. Kids these days don't know those things. But nonetheless, I want to share that with them. We can have a rotary phone there. We can have a payphone there. I saw a payphone. Museum of Tolerance has a payphone still. Fun fact. If you go to the military, that's all you use, payphones. Payphones and cards. And if you're, unfortunately, hopefully not, in jail or in prison, you gotta use a payphone. And it is highway robbery. It is so expensive. And hey, I want people to remember that, and hopefully the benefit is that we don't go back to those, and maybe we reform some systems here and there where you have to, if you're in jail, you have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for payphone cards. In some jails, not all of them, but there's specific jails that employ the service of, and I can't remember his name right now, but really, really wealthy loser who has all of your mail scanned and then sent to you with the world's worst Xerox machine. So the original you don't even get the original documents. You get copies of the documents that have been all mangled and photocopied horribly, and you don't get to talk to your family members. You don't get to do anything. And regardless of if you're a monster or if you're somebody who was the victim of society or the circumstances, or maybe you're innocent, completely innocent, and nobody knows yet. Regardless of all of those reasons, you should have the right to go ahead and communicate with, your loved one and all of these other things here and there. And so people can see how this technology has moved forward and how it's progressed and how difficult some of these things were and how expensive entertainment is and how much we have moved forward, there's a kind of a newfound appreciation for it, you know? It's like, wow, you know, when I get upset about pixelation on Ghost of Tsushima, or if I get upset about maybe a glitch in World of Warcraft or something, I'll think twice about, you know, sending the developers an angry email like, you guys don't know what you're doing, da 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 da, because not only is it difficult, but look how far we've come, and look how cool. And I hope you know, in this fantasy kind of museum that I want, I hope it inspires someone to go into computer science, to develop entertainment, to develop systems of defenses that are good, and systems of use that could help people achieve and obtain and become further and heavier and better educated, heavier knowledge, you know, science-based and logic-based kind of calculations and work and all of these things, so that we as a society can grow and help each other out more. But this has been Breakout, Atari 2600. Very, very, very simple game concept. As you see, I've gotten a little better over time. Sometimes this ball is a little harder. Sometimes this ball is a little faster. Sometimes it's, you know, if I turn it up too fast, it's almost uncontrollable. If I turn it on too slow, I won't reach in time. See? So I suggest you, everybody, hop on to, what is this, Classic Games. ClassicGames.cz is a little difficult finding an actual working, like, kind of as OG or as possible emulator. So this was actually pretty good. If you guys, you know, appreciate it, like, subscribe, and I try to do these videos every now and again. I'm trying to do it more often now. It is a hobby, and I really want to share these things. Oh wow, I didn't even see. I had a chat right there. Wow, I love old school computers and BBSing. I still do that. That's super cool, Anna. Wow. So I've never actually had somebody use the chat. So I didn't even realize anybody was there. Yeah, I love old modems. I love old school computers. I love all of those things. On my first video for the Oregon Trail, we did the, I actually hopped onto the command prompt, and I used, it's not Toslink, I don't remember what it was, but I used that actual feature and aspect of it, and it showed it. It was super, I should say, I had to open a Telenet. I had to activate Telenet, and then I could use Telenet, and it was super cool. I really enjoyed that, and I really love Classic and these pieces of technology that I really do think are being lost to history. I don't want it to be lost to history. I think those are super cool. Really, that's super wild to me, honestly. Elena, I had no idea you were there. So it was super cool that I actually see that now. It's unfortunate though that I'm having to log off because I have to shoot another video. Thank you everybody for watching. Just like, subscribe. I hope you guys keep following me, and I hope that I can bring you all some really good content. Thanks.